Listen, there's no story you've heard me tell more on this page than there's a character in Naruto who was forgotten, and I have a problem with that. I've told that story for Rock Lee, Might Guy, and even Obito. But when I tell you that none of those videos and none of those examples irk me to my core as deeply as the topic we're going to talk about today irks me to my core, I'm being dead serious. See, the idea of Kishimoto forgetting certain members of the Konoha 12 is a story as old as, well, Naruto. And while in OG Naruto, he definitely did a good job of remembering that there was 12 members of the Konoha 12, admittedly, it wasn't perfect. It's not like 1010 ever really got a moment to shine, after all. And you could say the same thing about Ino until, ironically, Boruto. But there's one character who, ironically, it's written into his character design that he is forgotten by those around him that definitely should not be forgotten, especially now. And that one character, if you somehow haven't gotten the hint yet, is Shino. See, when it comes to standing on business, there's very few people who do it as well as Shino in the Naruto universe. I mean, out of all of the characters in Naruto, he is one of the very few who has never lost a fight. The only other person that we've never seen lose a fight here is in Sarutobi, and like, kind of Naruto. I mean, I guess you could throw Kimimaro in there if you wanted to, because like he technically didn't lose, he just died, but I would count that as a loss. Now, technically, Shino does lose his first battle in Boruto in an anime-only episode where Mitsuki enters into Snake Sage mode and defeats him. However, both Mitsuki and Shino know that Shino had other bugs that he wasn't going to use against his student, and that defeat was just a kunai to a sensor plate. Outside of that, Shino holds the same record as Floyd Money Mayweather, undefeated. However, unfortunately, a large reason as to why we've never seen Shino lose in a battle is because he hasn't really gotten that many. See, while Shino does play a relatively big part in OG Naruto, he's all but forgotten in Shippuden, and you can't lose a fight if you never get one. So unfortunately, Shino has kind of been running off the clout that he got in OG Naruto for a pretty long time. And while we do see him mess up some White Zetsu and Ten Tails clones in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, basically making him a war hero like everybody else who fought in the Shinobi Alliance, the only genuinely important battle he got in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War was his battle against Tsurune. So if Shino's been being forgotten for as long as he's been being forgotten, then why is it a problem now? Well, because when it comes down to movesets that people in the Naruto universe have that would be incredibly advantageous against the current bad guys that the Naruto universe has, Shino kind of takes the cake. See, Shino not only stands as one of the greatest threats that humanity has against the Otsutsuki clan, but also as possibly one of the only people who stands a chance against the cyborgs. Yes, that's right. When it comes down to enemies of humankind, Shino is ironically humanity's best chance at victory, and yet he's nowhere to be found. And that's a problem, and pretty soon, you're gonna think it's a problem too. But before I get to screaming about how much I want my favorite 2012 Kanye West impersonator to get more screen time, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you like the idea of me screaming about your favorite anime, then you're gonna love my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where I talk about all other anime outside of Naruto and Boruto. Or if you just like the idea of me screaming in general, then you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or if you guys just want to look like somebody who will yell about anime at somebody else, go ahead and wander into my brand new merch store, where you can pick up some of the greatest anime sweatshirts, t-shirts, and sticker packs known to man. So the idea of characters from the Konoha 13 being forgotten isn't new. And in fact, in Boruto, it's all but an accepted reality. The only characters from the Konoha 13 who have any level of relevance to Boruto's story whatsoever are Sakura, barely, and her only moments of relevance really show up when she's healing either Naruto or Sasuke. Hinata, barely, and her only moments of relevance show up when she's being a mother to Himawari and Boruto. Shikamaru, especially now in Two Blue Vortex, since he is the 8th Hokage, and then obviously Naruto and Sasuke, who have ironically actually taken a big step back in terms of relevance. That leaves 7 members of the currently alive Konoha 13 to exist in obscurity. Now, while characters like Sai and Ino show up occasionally in the background to show that they're still important, to say that their main characters are irreplaceable is a stretch. And while, per usual, 1010 has definitely gotten the biggest shaft when it comes to being pushed to the side, Shino is right next to her. See, because while in Boruto's anime, Shino appears to have a somewhat big role, as he's the teacher of Boruto's homeroom, pretty much none of that exists in the manga. Meaning, in pretty much all the ways that matter, Shino has been deleted from Boruto. And while I do love Shino, I can sit here and acknowledge the fact that he's not the most interesting character in the Naruto universe. In fact, he was quite literally made to be that way. People in universe find him so disinteresting that every single time he tries to talk, they just talk over him. And therefore, him being forgotten in Boruto's plot seems like a logical progression to his character arc. However, there is one problem with that, and that's the fact that everything we know about how Shino's powers operate perfectly works to counter all of the big scary bad guys that keep getting introduced in Boruto. So you can forget about Kiba, Konohamaru, Sai, Ino, Choji, because their level of power doesn't allow them to battle against the biggest and baddest enemies in the Naruto universe today. For all intents and purposes, their plot relevance is zero. And unfortunately, in a universe that is undergoing rapid power creep, unless you're one of the Gokage, a Gokage level threat, or one of the main characters, you're not going to be able to keep up with the powers of this new and improved Naruto universe. And thus this fall in relevancy isn't only happening to the Konoha 13. Pretty much everybody from the previous generations is now irrelevant when it comes to power, as even people like Naruto and Sasuke, the two strongest people from Naruto, really no longer hold any water when it comes to power of importance. But quite literally, and probably the most ironic twist of fate in the history of fiction, while everybody else was losing relevance in terms of their power and their ability to fight the new bad guys of the new generation, the character who is written to be forgotten is gaining more relevance. And unfortunately, as a Naruto scholar, these are the kinds of things that I'm going to notice. See, Shino is the strongest Aburame in recorded history, so far as we know. And while there have been other Aburame of legendary renown and strength, like Yoji Aburame and Tsurune Aburame, Yoji died at the hands of Itachi before Shino would ever have a chance to battle against him, and Shino beat an Edo Tensei version of Tsurune. So Shino is stronger than Tsurune. And what's craziest about Shino being the strongest Aburame in the history of the Aburames is the fact that he could be stronger. See, the thing is, Danzo actively recruited from the Aburame clan, which is why his right-hand man was Tsurune Aburame. Now, the reason that Danzo recruited from the Aburame clan is because he knew their skill set was perfect for assassination and recon. They can control bugs that deliver lethal payloads of an untraceable poison to somebody from miles away, or they can use those very same bugs to do recon on enemies from an incredible distance away in a way that is untraceable and untrackable back to them. What, are you gonna follow a mosquito as it goes back to Shino to tell him all about the enemy's whereabouts? And for a long time, Danzo wanted to get his hands on Shino. However, Shino didn't want to join the route. And this is mostly because Shino understood that joining the route would entail using some of the Aburame's most brutal bugs. Now, the reason that we know all of this is because of the conversation that Shino and Tsurune have before their battle, when it's revealed that the reason that Tsurune was truly considered one of the strongest Aburame of all time is because Tsurune had an affinity with the Rinkaichu, a nanoscopic bug that's able to crawl across the skin of its user in order to make the user's skin impossible to touch. Well, I guess impossible to touch is the wrong way to describe it. But by having the Rinkaichu crawl its way across your skin and make you purple, any person who came into contact with your flesh would have the Rinkaichu leech onto them. And the Rinkaichu would then act as a flesh-eating parasite that would slowly but surely eat you until you were nothing but bones. It is a truly horrifying ability. However, Shino was able to acknowledge just how horrifying the Rinkaichu was, and therefore, even though he had affinity with it, he decided to not use it. But this is important to think about. Shino has the ability to use the Rinkaichu, just like Tsurune. And on top of this, we've seen Shino use a myriad of bugs that we've never seen other Aburame clansmen use. And there's technically only one kind of Aburame bug confirmed to exist that we've never seen Shino use or be confirmed to be able to use. And that would be the Kochu. Now, the Kochu was introduced in Itachi's second light novel, The Book of Dark Night, and it was introduced through the medium of Yoji Aburame, the assassin responsible for paralyzing and poisoning Shisui. See, the Kochu is a bug roughly the size of a mosquito. However, when it bites you, it not only paralyzes you, but also injects you with an untraceable poison. And this is the reason that Shisui told Itachi to cut him down, because Shisui already knew he was gonna die, and therefore he assumed that Itachi cutting down his best friend would be the best way that he could die, because Itachi would awaken his MS. But this Kochu was technically the only reason that Shisui was able to have his eyes stolen by Danzo in the first place. And therefore, considering the fact that this Kochu was able to kill Shisui with next to no issue, it's probably the strongest bug available for the Aburame. I mean, paralyze and poison in one bug the size of a mosquito. That is deadly. And there's really no reason for us to believe, outside of Shino's morals, that this is a bug he wouldn't be able to control. So in the hypothetical universe where Shino throws his morals to the side, as he won't be using these bugs to kill people, but Otsutsukis and cyborgs, and he begins to house not only the Rinkaichu, but also the Kochu, Shino would become, quite possibly, one of the deadliest people in the Naruto universe. Yes, Boruto, Kawaki, Code, Ishiki, Shibai included. See, do you guys remember when Ishiki in his true form pulled up on Konoha looking for Kawaki? And when Kiba, Rock Lee, Tenten, Choji, and Konohamaru decided that they were the Avengers and that they were going to stop Ishiki? And then they proceeded to get absolutely walked through so bad that the battle happened off screen, and the next thing that we saw after them attacking Ishiki was just them laying unconscious? Well, the primary thing that people were upset about there was the fact that Rock Lee, through the usage of his taijutsu, actually should have been a pretty good fight for Ishiki. That is, if Rock Lee decided to go all out. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that 8 Gates Rock Lee would have been able to defeat Ishiki in a fight, because there's no reason for us to believe that 8 Gates Rock Lee would be any stronger than 8 Gates Might Guy, and Ishiki is stronger than Madara. But Rock Lee being defeated so badly by Ishiki that he got off screen did feel a bit disrespectful. However, that's not even what I was most upset about from this scene, because now, for the second time in Naruto's history, the wrong team was sent to get the mission done. I mean, that actually happens a good amount in Boruto. It's why Obito dies. It's why Tsunade's little brother dies. It's why Shisui's best friend died. It's why Tobirama died. But what I'm trying to get at here is that that fight would have gone a whole lot different if Shino, in this hypothetical situation, was there. And that hypothetical situation is a situation in which Shino is now housing the Rinkaichu and the Kochu. See, because when the Sasuke retrieval arc was happening back in OG Naruto and Shikamaru was recruiting as many genin as he could get his hands on, Shino was unfortunately away on a mission. And it's believed by many people, yours very much included, that if Shino was on the Sasuke retrieval arc, Sasuke would have come home. And therefore what I'm trying to say is this is basically the Sasuke retrieval arc part 2, where if Shino had just decided to be present, the battle would have gone a whole lot differently. See, am I sitting here and saying that in a one-on-one, this version of Shino would be able to defeat Ishiki? Probably not. But what I am saying is that Shino, as a member of the Aburame clan, a man who controls bugs, he's pretty much immune to anything that Ishiki can do. See, Shino's bugs are living creatures, which means in a battle against Ishiki, he couldn't shrink them, which is usually how Ishiki is able to nullify the ninjutsu of his opponents. Throw a Rasengan at me, well now it's a nanocentimeter and it's not gonna do any damage. You hit me with Amaterasu, I make the Amaterasu infinitesimally small, and I no longer have to worry about how powerful it is, because a fire smaller than a molecule of oxygen isn't gonna hurt that bad. On top of the fact that his bugs can't be shrunken, they also cannot be absorbed, as things like the Rinnegan palms of Momoshiki or the karma markings of either Boruto or Kawaki or Code can't absorb living things, which is why by and large if you're battling against somebody with a karma marking or an Otsutsuki, it's best to go with taijutsu. And this is why people have speculated that people like Might Guy and Rock Lee would be way more important to the story in Boruto than they currently are, because ninjas who are heavily reliant on ninjutsu like Sasuke and Naruto are all but irrelevant in the face of somebody who can absorb all ninjutsu. So not only does Shino hold relevance in a battle against Ishiki who can't shrink his bugs, but he also holds relevance against karma wielders, cyborgs, and Momoshiki. And outside of being able to nullify the abilities of the Rinnegan and Ishiki's dojutsu, Shino also has the ability to nullify the abilities of the Byakugan. See, Shino and most Aburame clan members have a little technique known as the insect jamming technique. This is a technique wielded by Aburame clan members specifically to jam the abilities of sensor-type ninjas. The way that this is done is that the Aburame clansman in question releases thousands of their bugs, and they have each and every single one of these individual bugs release a small amount of chakra. These bugs then effectively work in the same way as an EMP, or the fallout of a nuclear explosion. By filling the air with as many chakra signatures as possible, it nullifies sensor-type ninjas' abilities to use their sensor-type abilities. Let's say you're Ino, or a member of the Yamanaka clan, and you want to be able to communicate with your other Yamanakas, or just other people on the battlefield. Insect jamming techniques' field grid of chakra signatures would interfere with your ability to do that, like losing signal on a cell phone. Let's say you're a Yamanaka or a Senjutsu user who wants to sense the enemy's chakra signature from a fair distance away. Once again, insect jamming technique would get in the way of that. And it's no different with the Byakugan. By surrounding a Byakugan user with thousands of chakra signatures, they would have no way to discern where you are, what your abilities are, if you're molding chakra, and they sure wouldn't be able to see your Tenketsu points and hit you with Gentle Fist. Now, the reason that the Aburame clan has this technique is because their entire job is assassination and recon, which means if there's sensor-type ninjas out there who are able to figure out where they are, they can get to the location and kill them. And as the Aburame clan specializes in long-distance assassination and recon, having somebody press the offensive to them is not ideal. And while obviously, since the Aburame clan and the Hyuga clan are both royal families of Konoha, there was never really a need for the Aburame clan to create a jutsu that countered the Hyuga's Byakugan. However, you better believe that since they've been working in tandem for 100 or so years, they know exactly how the Byakugan works. So Shino, and technically all Aburame clan members, have immunity to the Byakugan, Ishiki's Dojutsu, and the chakra absorption ability of the Rinnegan, meaning all of the dojutsu abilities we've seen from canon Otsutsukis is nullified by the Aburame. Not to mention that the Otsutsuki, while immune to genjutsu, have never been stated to be immune to things like poison. In fact, considering the fact that Boruto was taking a medication to dampen the abilities of the Byakugan, and that managed to halt his Otsutsufication to a fairly high degree, this would imply that that medication successfully dampened the abilities of Momoshiki, which means that things like medications and possibly poisons can be used to great effect against the Otsutsuki. So if a pill that's supposed to weaken the abilities of the Byakugan is able to weaken the abilities of Momoshiki, who is a Byakugan wielder, one could pretty easily make the argument that things like medications and poisons work as effectively on the Otsutsuki as they do on humans, which means from an offensive perspective, both the Kochu and the Rinkaichu stand a fair to decent chance against the Otsutsuki. So if hypothetically in a battle, Shino was able to get one of his Kochu to bite an Otsutsuki, it's a pretty good possibility they would not only be paralyzed, but poisoned. It's also fair to assume that if Shino was wielding the Rinkaichu in a battle against an Otsutsuki and he managed to touch one of them, that the flesh-eating disease would begin to eat away their flesh. And while the Otsutsuki have a healing factor to some degree, there's no way for us to say for sure that their healing factor would be able to outpace their skin being eaten away by the Rinkaichu. And on top of all of this, while we've never seen an Otsutsuki use genjutsu, outside of like the big moon-based one, of course, Shino is technically immune to genjutsu, as it was stated by Shino that because his bugs are so small and don't have a nervous system that they can't be affected by genjutsu. And therefore, in the circumstance that Shino is placed under genjutsu, his bugs can simply just disrupt his chakra like a perfect Jinchuriki would be able to do and break him out of genjutsu. Now obviously this does run counter to the fact that Yoji Aburame's bugs were placed under Tsukiyomi by Itachi so he would stand still so Itachi could light him on fire with Amaterasu. However, Tsukiyomi is one of the most powerful genjutsus on Earth. So I'm willing to make the bet that the reason that Yoji Aburame's bugs were able to be placed under genjutsu is Tsukiyomi. But once again, like I said, the only time that we've ever seen an Otsutsuki use genjutsu is when Kaguya used infinite Tsukiyomi. So what am I driving at here? Do I want Shino, Naruto Next Generations? No. And do I think that Shino's gonna step up in close quarter combat against the likes of Ishiki like Naruto in Baryon mode? Also no. However, why isn't Shino operating in the function that he's meant to operate? Shino and all Aburame clansmen are support characters. Hey, Naruto and Sasuke are going for a round 2 against the guy who beat them so badly a week ago that he pulled them out of their massive chakra constructs. And mid pulling Sasuke out of his Susanoo, he was like, the Susanoo, an incredible defensive weapon, but so slow. Maybe we try to maximize our chances against this guy and, I don't know, bring somebody who specializes in assassination, who has bugs that won't be able to be shrunken or absorbed by Ishiki. See, because here's the thing. Ishiki is big, bad, and scary. And do I think that one bite from a Kochu is gonna kill him? No. But do I think him being paralyzed for a couple of seconds at a time would be incredibly useful? Yes.
But Nick, Ishiki would just make himself the size of the bug so he couldn't be bitten by him.
But you know what would be incredible at tracking something the size of a bug? Other bugs. Now I understand that Ishiki is so fast that Sasuke with his MS couldn't track his location, but once again I am saying that Shino could operate in an incredible support capacity. And even if, hypothetically, Shino did find himself in a close quarter combats battle against Ishiki, well, I'm not saying that Shino's taijutsu is up to the level of Baryon mode Naruto's. If he was able to activate his Rinkaichu, technically Ishiki wouldn't be able to hurt him physically. I mean, of course, hypothetically, Ishiki could just throw a bunch of chakra rods into Shino's chest and then that battle's over. But what I am saying is that Shino gives people like Naruto and Sasuke, 2 close quarter combat brawl type fighters, a substantially better chance at victory against the highest level of threat. And that highest level of threat doesn't only extend to the Otsutsukis. That highest level of threat also extends to people like Damon. See, Damon has a reflection jutsu, which means that if hypothetically you try and shoot Damon in the head, the bullet will be reflected into your head. However, the reflectability is assumed to be gauged on intent. And so if you're walking down the street straight with a sword and you tripped and you accidentally threw the sword, there's a possibility if that sword hit Damon, it wouldn't be reflected. We don't know for sure. Nobody's ever tried to attack Damon without the intent to attack, but it appears as though his reflectability reflects based off intent and also without his knowledge, which means that any attack launched at him with the intent to harm will be reflected back onto the user. However, this brings up a very logistical issue for Damon versus the Aburame, because let's say hypothetically Shino tries to attack Damon with 1,000 Kochu. Now these bugs are technically trying to attack Damon. They're trying to bite him so they can paralyze him and poison him. That is an attack through and through. So it makes sense to me that these bugs would be reflected. However, the attacks that these bugs were launching at Damon wouldn't be reflected onto Shino. They'd be reflected onto the bugs, as the bugs are their own living creatures. And while they are listening to Shino, just because Shino was telling them what to do doesn't mean that Shino would see the reflection, which means that Shino has a lot to work with when it comes to forgiveness for Damon's reflectability. However, Shino does have bugs that aren't technically attacks, and they're bugs that he already canonically has. The best example of this is Shino's Kidaichu. See, we saw Shino use the Kidaichu against Ten Tails clones, and it was revealed in that moment that the Kidaichu are a bug that live in the Aburame, and like all the other bugs that they house, they're a bit different in the fact that they need to be fed an exact amount of chakra, otherwise they'll grow wildly out of proportion, leading them to change from a bug that could very easily fit inside of a body to roughly the size of a boulder, which means that if these bugs are put into somebody's body who doesn't know how much chakra to feed them, that is to say somebody who's not an Aburame clan member, they will essentially explode from the inside out. But this isn't an attack, at least not from the perception of the Kidaichu. See, this is simply the act of switching hosts. If Shino were to place his Kidaichu in Damon and Damon was able to feed them the correct amount of chakra, the attack would do nothing. And while it could be technically considered an attack from Shino, so far as his Kidaichu know, they're only switching chakra sources. They're not trying to kill whatever they're inside of. They just grow rapidly when they're given too much chakra. So if hypothetically Shino was able to get his Kidaichu into Damon, Damon more likely than not wouldn't know how much chakra to give them and then would explode from the inside out. However, since the Kidaichu were just trying to survive and definitely not kill Damon because Damon was their current chakra source and him dying would mean no more chakra source, they're simply just trying to exist, but they're given too much of the thing that makes them exist. And this flaw in Damon's armor goes double for the fact that Shino in this circumstance also has the Rinkaichu. And if hypothetically Shino was able to bait Damon into grabbing a part of his body affected by the Rinkaichu, since that wasn't an attack by Shino, there's a fair amount of possibility that the Rinkaichu would be able to leech onto Damon's body. And even if they weren't and the abilities of the Rinkaichu were reflected onto Shino, they wouldn't affect Shino because the Rinkaichu don't eat his skin. Now, at the very least, assuming that neither the Rinkaichu or the Kidaichu work for some reason, there's also the fact that, like we said, the attacks of all these bugs would be reflected onto the bugs. So if there's one person who would be able to keep as much pressure as possible on Damon without worrying about the reflectability killing them, it would be Shino. Meaning, hypothetical circumstance or not, Shino would give Damon a pretty good fight. And we consider the fact that Damon and all of these Otsutskis stand a pretty fair chance at threatening some of Shino's students. It would make sense to reason that he would hop into a couple of these fights. And yet, he doesn't. For what reason? We can't be entirely sure. But unfortunately, the most likely answer is the plot doesn't want it. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that Shino's lack of involvement in Boruto is as criminal as I do, or do you think it's just kind of natural? Tell me in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Just give me 15 minutes with Kishimoto, man. I swear we're gonna get this story turned around. The story's already very good. It doesn't need my help, but there are some things I would like to see.